Number 10. Deadpool Dinosaur. Deadpool Dinosaur is a version of Deadpool that is a T-Rex. The main thing that indicates his Deadpool-ness is that he's wearing a Deadpool mask and is part of the evil Deadpool Corps. The evil Deadpool Corps are a group of villainous Deadpools originally led by an alternate Deadpool, Dreadpool. They aim to eliminate all Deadpools across the multiverse. Deadpool works to stop them and annihilate this villainous group in the story Deadpool Kills Deadpool with the help of his own good team of Deadpools, known simply as the Deadpool Corps. Deadpool Dinosaur is accompanied by his own Moon Boy, who looks a lot like Logan in the face, if I'm being honest. Is this just me noticing this? This version of Moon Boy also fights from Deadpool Dinosaur's saddle with a big gun. The two are basically an alternate version of Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur, with of course some Deadpool mixed in there. Number 9. Deadpool. This version of Deadpool is basically a combination of former evil AIM leader MODOK and Deadpool himself. One can assume he has the brilliant mind of MODOK but also has the brilliant fighting skills of Deadpool, even with his tiny, disproportionate arms. Not only does Deadpool seem to fight with swords, but he also has two turret firearms on his head. While MODOK stands for mental organism designed only for killing, Deadpool supposedly stands for destructive engine of assassination, despite panpygoptosis, obsessed with opponent liquidation. Number 8. Venompool. In a story that has continued through various What If issues, we get to meet Venompool. Venompool is an alternate version of Deadpool from the alternate Earth of 90211. Here Deadpool ends up becoming bonded with the Venom symbiote during his time with the Beyonder, following a run-in with Peter Parker, who was bonded with the symbiote at the time. The symbiote leaves a defeated Peter Parker for Deadpool and bonds with him. Later on in his life, this is a path that leads Deadpool to end up killing all the heroes of his universe, whom he does not find attractive. He does let the attractive ones live. I guess that's something, I guess. Following a therapy session with Doc Samson, who this version of Deadpool also promptly kills thereafter, he realizes he needed to be true to who he was. This allowed Venompool to accept that who he was a massive jerk, and prompted him to use a weapon called the Retcon Expungifier to wipe out the entire universe. Basically, he's in the running for being the biggest jerk of all the Deadpool alternates. Number 7. Cesspool. We don't know that much about Cesspool. Like many of the darkest alternates of Deadpool, Cesspool was part of the evil Deadpool Corps. What we do know of him is that he has a terrifying appearance and mutation. He's completely covered in mouths with razor sharp teeth and uses these to try and devour his opponents. Yipes. This is like something straight out of a horror movie. Number 6. Galactipool. This alternate version of Deadpool was too dark for even main continuity Deadpool himself. Galactipool shows up just as we thought the fight was coming to a close between the Deadpool Corps and the evil Deadpool Corps. Galactipool is a combination of Galactus and Deadpool, and Wade wondered where in the heck the evil Deadpool Corps even found an alternate like this Galactus Pool. Fortunately, despite him likely having I guess some kind of intense cosmic power, alternate Deadpool, Lady Deadpool, manages to defeat Galactipool using the Deadpool Corps ship B. Arthur. Sadly, this was the end of B. Rest in peace, B. Number 5. Wolverine Pool. What happens when you take Deadpool and Wolverine and mix them together? You get Wolverine Pool. Wolverine Pool comes from the alternate Earth of 1946. Wolverine Pool is the Ultimate Weapon X program weapon. He is a version of Wade Wilson who had adamantium bonded to his skeleton. He belonged to the evil Deadpool Corps and was killed during a fight with the non-evil Deadpool Corps. It is assumed that he of course has a healing factor, but not one strong enough to regenerate himself when reduced to just a skeleton, and likely a healing factor that was weaker than both the main continuity Wolverine and the main continuity Deadpool. Number 4. Red Tool. Red Tool is actually not from an alternate Marvel universe, but is actually from DC Comics. Oddly enough, while Marvel's Deadpool was created by Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nicieza to be a parody of DC's Deathstroke, DC then decided to themselves parody Marvel's own parody of their character, creating Red Tool, who is a parody of Deadpool. He's a parody of a parody. Still, just because we are stuck in a weird perpetuation of parody doesn't mean that Red Tool has to be a super light and fun character. Although he kind of is that too. Red Tool is dark in the fact that he only fights with tools, including power tools, making his physical conflicts also appear a lot more gruesome than his Marvel counterpart. And he doesn't have a healing factor, instead he just can't feel pain, due to having a part of his brain removed, which also makes him somehow even more disturbing of a character than Marvel's Deadpool. Pretty impressive actually. Good job, DC. Number Number 3. Headpool. Headpool is the version of Deadpool from the Marvel Zombieverse of Earth 2149. He is aptly named Headpool because in the end, that is all that's left of him. A head. But a head who is still very much alive, that is, and would still very much like to eat you. This version of Deadpool was also not confined to just existing in the alternate Earth of Earth 2149. He ended up making his way to Earth 616 while he still had most of his full body actually. He ended up making his way to Earth 616 while he still had mostly his full body actually. He was thought to have been completely decimated during a fight there, but it turns out he survived, but simply had lost the rest of his body and was now just a head. Number 2. Dreadpool. One of the darkest alternates around, Dreadpool is the version of Deadpool who appeared in Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. He is from the alternate Earth of 12101, where he was driven even more insane than he already is. A therapist known as Dr. Benjamin Brighton attempted to brainwash Deadpool so he might use him for his own means. However, this failed, and instead ridded Deadpool of his standard inner voices, replacing them with a single voice. This voice in his head seemed fully aware that nothing in the Marvel Universe was actually real, and encouraged Deadpool to free everyone from this fictional prison or fictional reality by killing them all off, which Deadpool then proceeded to do. Basically, Dreadpool is from Deadpool's darkest timeline. Number 1. Evil Deadpool. Evil Deadpool is an alternate Deadpool from the main reality of Earth 616. He is sort of a Franken version of Deadpool who was created by the deranged and psychotic Dr. Ella Whitby. Ella Whitby accidentally helped to create him from storing bits and pieces of Deadpool's body, which had been lost throughout his life while he fought. She collected these because she was obsessed with Deadpool. She was also madly in love with Wade. Though they were stored in her fridge, they were likely part of her shrine of collectibles of Deadpool. In the end, Deadpool found these parts in her fridge and tossed them out. As they thawed in the garbage bag he disposed of them in, they came to life and rejoined together to create Evil Deadpool. A version of Deadpool that is evil and just an all-around complete jerk for the sake of being one, whose fighting skills rival the real Deadpool and who also has a backwards arm, which actually proves to be surprisingly useful in fights for him.
Number 10. The Fantastic Thors. One of the more interesting aspects of Reed Richardson's intellect is that he is able to recognize the contributions other versions of himself can offer. So obviously the only logical step from there would be to form the Council of Reeds, which includes versions of himself from across the multiverse, but they aren't exactly a team. While it would be super interesting to see a full team of Mr. Fantastics, Marvel decided to go in a different direction and instead gave us the Fantastic Thors, which is exactly what it sounds like it would be. It's the Fantastic Four, but they're also all Thor. Not a whole lot is known about the origins of this mystical team, but it can be assumed that they obtained their powers in a similar way to their 616 counterparts, but how they all became Thor is the biggest mystery. This team showed up during the Secret Wars event as the members of the Thor Corps, a planet patrolling police force pretty similar to DC's Green Lantern Corps, composed of Thors scattered across the multiverse. This specific foursome of Thors actually works specifically for Doom as a special police force though. Check them out for yourself in their one-off appearance in 2015 Siege Volume 2, Number 4. Number 9. The Fantastic Five. Much to Spider-Man's dismay and constant pleading, he was never able to convince the Fantastic Four to add a fifth member. However, he did actually eventually get on the team, but whatever. Funnily enough, there have been moments throughout the team's history where they've actually allowed for the inclusion of a fifth member. A reality where this was done in an unusual way was the MC2 universe of Earth 982, which was the home to the Fantastic Five. The key and honestly really interesting element of Earth 982 was that the heroes actually aged in real time, making it possible for their children to take up their mantle. The origins of this team were parallel to their 616 counterparts until the time Spider-Man had his first kid. After sustaining some pretty terrible injuries, Reed and Sue were forced to step down from the team, leaving Johnny in charge, who took it upon himself to round out the team a little bit by adding Franklin Richards and his wife Elijah to the team. The team at its core from that point on was comprised of the Human Torch, a partially cybernetic Thing, Psylord, Miss Fantastic, and Big Brain, who is a robot that acted as a replacement for Reed. Eventually, the Fantastic Five did grow beyond 5 members to include Johnny and Elijah's son Taurus, a revived Sue Storm, and Christophe Bernard, the adopted son of Dr. Doom. Check out this team for yourself in 1998's What If, Volume 2, Number 105. Number 8. The Fearsome Four. The Fantastic Four assembled to become a superhero team in the Marvel Universe due to their unique circumstances. And then on the other hand, there is the Fearsome Four, a team vastly different from the Fantastic Four that formed more so out of necessity than anything. The Fearsome Four came into being as a result of the Fear Itself crossover event. They found out that they had to work together to keep Psycho Man from gaining control over Man-Thing, who was undergoing a severe case of fear overload at the time. Now you're probably thinking that's a pretty normal reason for the team to form, and you're absolutely right. The unusual thing about them is the people who formed the team. The leader of the team is none other than, say it with me now, Howard the Duck, and is assisted by She-Hulk, Nighthawk, and of course, Frankenstein's monster. Facing various alternate universes heroes and the Psycho Man brought to Earth by the Man-Thing's connection to the nexus of all realities. The four were eventually able to confront their own fears and calm the Man-Thing, bringing an end to his rampage and saving the world before deciding to go their separate ways. Give their story a read for yourself, starting with 2011's Fear itself, Fearsome Four, number 1. Number 7, the Fin Fang Four. While the Fantastic Four's roster has changed over the years to include the likes of She-Hulk and Spider-Man, the team has pretty much always been made of humans, or at least human adjacent. Even across the multiverse, the various teams that call themselves some form of the Fantastic Four tend to fit into that sort of mold. Well, throw that ideology away for this iteration of the team, because then there is the Fin Fang Four, which is arguably the most ridiculous version of the team ever made. The team is made up entirely of monsters, and they are just as insane as you might expect, as they're all former enemies of the Fantastic Four on Earth 616. The team is made up of Fin Fang Foom, Electro, Gorgilla, and Googum, all shrunk down to human size. They all ended up taking jobs at the Four's Freedom Plaza, becoming window washers and cooks, but when the monster Tim Boo Ba attacked, it was up to the newly formed Fin Fang Four to defeat the monster and save the world. Don't believe that this is real? Well, I swear I am not making it up. Check it out for yourself in 2005's Marvel Monsters Fin Fang 4, number 1. Number 6, Four from the Fantastic. Hailing from Earth 311 and appearing in the Marvel 1602 storyline, the Four from the Fantastic is comprised of Sir Reed Richards, Susan Storm, Jonathan Storm, and Benjamin Grimm, the crew of the ship The Fantastic that gained their powers after they were exposed to a wave of energy in the Sargasso Sea. You probably already assumed, but just in case you were curious, the powers they gain are fundamentally the same as their 616 counterparts. However, Susan is initially unable to remain visible and spends a majority of her time invisible. After traveling the world, the team found themselves trapped in Latveria under Count Otto von Doom's castle, and they were not freed until the other heroes of this reality rescued them. The Four returned to London and supposedly retired from heroing. Then several months later though, Doom kidnapped William Shakespeare to have him chronicle his journeys to the end of the earth, with the Four who are frightful, and the Four from the Fantastic, including a pregnant Susan, go after them. The Four from the Fantastic manage to escape with William Shakespeare, but everyone else falls with Ben Salem to the bottom of the ocean and unfortunately presumably dies. Returning to London once again, Grimm decides to take up acting, Reed and Susan live together, and John spends a majority of his remaining time drinking away his sorrows in pubs. Check out this iteration of the Fantastic Four for yourself, starting with 2004's Marvel 1602, number 7. Number 5, the Fantastic Four, Earth 2149. Honestly, not a whole lot is known about the Skrull Fantastic Four before the zombie plague hit on Earth 2149, but it's assumed that they were created after the Skrulls were unable to recreate Super Skrull. Known as Elastic Skrull, Skrull Torch, Skrull Thing, and Invisible Skrull, this Fantastic Four dwelled in the catacombs beneath Skrull City and immediately attacked the 616 Fantastic Four on sight as they were deemed threats. However, after a brief conversation, the 8 of them teamed up, effectively making them, the implausible 8? When a zombified Luke Cage burst into the command center, the new Fantastic Four and Skrull Fantastic Four attacked. But finding the zombie to be extremely powerful, they decided to fall back to an escape ship. With Cage in hot pursuit, the Skrull Fantastic Four had no choice but to defend the others as they made their escape. But even as the ship took off, they were fighting a losing battle and became infected. The newly zombified Skrull Fantastic Four watched the escape ship unexpectedly lose power and crash back to the ground, at which point they tore through the hull and faced the new Fantastic Four, and needless to say, it didn't end too well for them. Invisible Skrull was decapitated, Elastic Skull was electrocuted, stabbed, and then burnt to a crisp, Skrull Thing was covered in molten metal, and Skrull Torch was impaled and energy blasted. Check out these Skrulls for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 2007's Black Panther, Volume 4, number 28. Number 4, Sue Storm, Earth 65. Alrighty, let's get into some dark iterations of individual members of the Fantastic Four. Sue Storm from Earth 65 was actually a cast member of the Fantastic Four TV series. However, she is not the Sue we're all used to. She is a vain, arrogant, manipulative, and just an all-around ruthless person, bullying her younger brother Johnny Storm into doing her bidding. Sue arranged for Victor Von Doom to give her and her brother superpowers during the trip to Latveria, seducing him and eventually murdering him in cold blood when he was no longer of any use to her. After 5 years of honing her newly acquired skills, she returned to New York and her and Johnny killed their mother and started acting as quote-unquote vigilantes. Although technically a hero, Sue was not the most altruistic, as she tricked Ghost Spider into believing that they were friends, intending to kill Gwen and her family once the veteran hero had shown her and her brother the lay of the land. Persuaded by Johnny to give Gwen a chance to leave New York, Sue just coldly blackmailed Gwen into leaving Earth 65 altogether. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 2016's Spider-Gwen Volume 2, number 7. Number 3, It. In the House of M series, Ben Grimm was the pilot of Reed Richards' voyage to space alongside Sue Storm and John Jonah Jameson III. In true Fantastic Four fashion, Grimm was mutated alongside the other members of the crew. However, the rocket exploded unexpectedly and he was the only survivor as he had transformed into the Thing and his rock-hard skin had protected him. The biggest difference between this Ben and his 616 counterpart is that this version had his intelligence vastly lowered after his transformation, leaving him only capable of well below average thought. After some time, he was taken in by Dr. Doom, who dubbed him the It, and he became one of the Frightful Four alongside the Inhuman Torch and Invincible Woman. Grimm was treated like absolute garbage by Doom, often the victim of all his frustrations, and it eventually got to the point where he betrayed Doom and sided with Polaris to help take him down. After defeating his former leader/captor, Grimm was taken to the Human Resistance by Alicia Masters, and hopefully, I really hope he is just being treated well there. Check him out starting with 2005's Fantastic Four House of M, number 1. Number 2, Vanguard. The Johnny Storm of Earth 721 has a bit of a different backstory compared to his 616 counterpart. This version never actually went into space, so he was never transformed into the Human Torch. Instead, he went off to fight in the war in East Asia and wound up getting hurt pretty bad. He was found by Archon, who fixed him up, erased his memories, and restructured his mind so that he could serve as Guard, the Guardian of the Nexus, who is a key player in Archon's scheme to start a war between 3 separate worlds. The Fantastic Four, with the help of Reed Richards of Earth 721, discovered the plan, and the Thing of Earth 616 was sent to battle Guard and destroy the Nexus. And once the Nexus was destroyed, Guard escaped off into the Void. Guard was then transformed into Vanguard by the Void and acquired the ability to destroy realities. And with this power, he felt he had a new purpose in life: to travel to different realities and destroy timelines he felt were redundant. At first, Vanguard appeared to be unbeatable, but eventually he came into contact with the Human Torch of Earth 616, and this caused him to have a bit of an internal crisis, because he realized that could have been him if things were just the tiniest bit different. From that point on, Vanguard decided to end his destruction of timelines and instead help other timelines find closure. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1975's Fantastic Four, number 162. And number 1, Dark Raider. You probably thought I was going to be talking about Reed Richards as the maker, right? Come on, that is way too easy, and I have to leave myself something for part 2, right? Dark Raider is a counterpart of Reed Richards from Earth 944, who, when he entered the ship of Galactus to search for the Ultimate Nullifier, he was a bit distracted by the technology around him. While he looked around, Galactus was free to consume his world, and this left Reed a little messed up, to say the least. Full of feelings of self-loathing and accepting full responsibility for his actions, he decided that the only way to atone for his sins was to travel across the multiverse and kill every version of himself that he could find. And he developed the identity of the Dark Raider in order to carry out this deadly mission. He was able to kill at least 3 Reeds before coming in contact with the Fantastic Four of Earth 616, and once actually on Earth 616, he revealed his intentions and identity, and threatened to destroy the entire reality using the Ultimate Nullifier. Thankfully, Aaron was able to capture Dark Raider and kept him prisoner for quite a while before releasing him, causing him to plummet into the Annihilation Barrier and killing him for good. Highly recommend you check out this alternate read, so give his story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1994's Fantastic Four, number 387.
Number 10, Earth 13371. While we don't know for sure, it's possible that in this reality the Brood Queen actually won and sought to expand her rule by traveling to the main continuity universe of Earth 616 through a crack in the universe. Whether or not this is a thing on Earth 13371, it still seems to be a pretty dark timeline in Professor Xavier's case. In this alternate reality, Charles somehow found himself transformed into a giant Akanti whale, who became possessed by the Brood Queen and used as her space vessel, transporting both her and her army. After a fight with the Extreme X-Men, this version of Charles asked Dazzler to kill him to prevent him from being controlled and used for ill by another evil force in the future. Number 9, Reign. The series Spider-Man Reign takes place in the alternate future belonging to Earth 70237. Here on this Earth in New York at least, there are no longer superheroes or supervillains, there's just the government and the police. The city of New York and its citizens are strictly monitored and protected by both to a point where their control feels both brutal and big brothery. Here, an old man Peter has turned both insane and senile, with Mary Jane having passed and haunting him in what appear to be dark hallucinations. Parker attempts to return as Spider-Man at one point, but is now an old man and ends up having his head bashed in with Mary Jane's tombstone later on in the timeline. Number 8. Earth X. This reality was created by Alex Ross and Jim Krueger in the late 1990s, and was meant to be Marvel's equivalent to DC's Kingdom Come. It was a lot more spacey than DC's Kingdom Come, but it wasn't any less dark. Earth X's alternate reality of 9997 explored a world where Earth was forever changed when the Inhumans decided to release a ton of Terrigen mists into the air to create more supers. This created a ton of chaos on Earth as people were popping up with superpowers everywhere, but it gets even more crazy when it's discovered a celestial egg is growing within the Earth's core, and the Celestials come to eliminate the human race. Franklin adopts the mantle of Galactus and joins up with his father, Mr. Fantastic, and Black Bolt to defeat the Celestials and destroy the egg. But this creates a bunch of other problems, leaving the Earth unstable and setting off a ton of natural disasters. Number 7. Ultimate. The Ultimate Universe was created to be the darker, more edgy version of Marvel's main continuity, Earth 616. This is the reality where Tony Stark and Carol Danvers decided the best way to resolve their difference and dislike of one another was to hook up. After, of course, Black Widow and Tony were no longer a thing, because it turned out Black Widow was still an actual spy who had plans to double-cross her teammates. Natasha ended up dead at the hands of her usually very good friend and former love interest in the main continuity, Hawkeye. Hawkeye in this reality lost his family because of Black Widow, they were killed by the people she worked with, and Clint himself was captured, tortured, and only escaped by using his fingernails as deadly projectile weapons. He then tracked down Natasha where she was being held in the hospital and executed her. Yep, the Earth of 1610 was basically meant to be the darker 616. Number 6. Days of Future Past. The alternate Earth of 811 is an alternate future reality where the Sentinels rule. The Sentinels, being enemies of mutants, have killed most of their opponents, with the surviving mutants being kept in camps. The concentration kind, by the way, not the fun kind, sadly. Not only are most mutant heroes dead, but many of the non-mutant heroes are as well, with Avengers, Spider-Man, and FF being taken out additionally. It's just overall a bleak reality where pretty much everybody's dead. Number 5. Old Man Logan. One of the bleakest timelines we've seen explored is that of Old Man Logan. This alternate reality shows us a potential alternate future for Wolverine that follows the events of a final showdown between Marvel's superheroes and their supervillains, wherein the villains won. Logan himself is responsible in this reality for killing his fellow X-Men, being tricked into doing so by one of Mysterio's illusions, which made him believe that his fellow teammates were actually villains who had infiltrated the X-Mansion. Sad, poor Logan. Number 4. Age of Apocalypse. Let's just talk about how this reality even came to be, which is dark enough. In this reality, Legion was attempting to eliminate Magneto to avoid him becoming a threat in a potential future, but Xavier put himself in Legion's path as he attacked. As such, Legion ended up killing his own father Xavier by accident. Here, the villain Magneto leads the X-Men and attempts to fight against the devastating foe Apocalypse. Even when they finally succeed, Weapon X, aka this world's Wolverine, ends up turning against them once more and rising up, becoming the new Apocalypse. Great. Yeesh. Number 3. Zombieverse. One of the darkest realities and most well-known alternate realities belonging to the Marvelverse is the Zombieverse of Earth 2149. In this reality, pretty much every hero or villain you know, love, or despise has been turned into a zombie or has been killed. And many of the non-powered characters that you may have loved, well, a lot of those people are dead. Evil Dead character and well-known undead fighter Ashley Williams also makes an appearance in this reality. He ends up working his way into one of the last places that is safe from the infection on Earth, Castle Doomstat, the home of Dr. Doom. While Ash ends up surviving the events, Doom and many others end up perishing as even the castle later becomes overrun, while Doom rushes to save the survivors he was housing, ushering them through a portal which Doom plans to close behind them. Still, Doom doesn't get to escape, he just gets to be zombie food. Number 2. Thanos Wins. The reality of Thanos Wins may not yet have an official number, but for now you can find it under temporary reality number 666, aka TRN 666. Just from that temporary number, you should be able to get a sense for how dark this alternate reality is. This reality is one where Thanos became king after killing pretty much every other being in the galaxy. With everything else reduced to ash, he had Ghost Rider, who is currently serving him, fetch the Thanos of Earth 616, so that this younger alternate version of himself could kill the older King Thanos. That way, King Thanos could finally be with his true love, Death. In this reality, Hulk has also been kept for years as Thanos' pet, and Ghost Rider is actually Cosmic Ghost Rider Frank Castle, who was driven insane as the Spirit of Vengeance after being left alone on Earth for presumably hundreds of years, finally joining Galactus, only to later have to finally join King Thanos when they were defeated by him. Sad. Number 1. Cancerverse. In this reality, Lovecraftian elder gods known as the Many-Angled Ones made a deal with the cancer-ridden Mar-Vell. Instead of Mar-Vell dying like on Earth 616, he ended up curing the reality of the concept of death using a ritual. It's not good. Without any more death, life transformed into something darker without anything to keep it in check. It's bad news. All of the heroes of Earth 10011, the Cancerverse reality, became corrupted, and Franklin Richards became a host for the Many-Angled Ones, as described in Annihilation Scourge. The Cancerverse also attempted to infiltrate the main continuity of Earth 616 at one point, aiming to spread their corruption. It's a scary place, the Cancerverse.
Number 10. Speed Demon. Coming at us from the Amalgam Universe, a parallel universe that is composed of mashups of some of our favorite Marvel and DC characters that was unfortunately destroyed thanks to the cross-multiveral conflict, comes Blaze Allen, a combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Once a stunt rider working at a carnival, Blaze Allen becomes the Speed Demon following the death of his wife at the hands of the evil Night Spectre. He was convinced by Merlin to bond with the demon known as Etrigan, and from there the entity known as Speed Demon was born. Granted the abilities of Ghost Rider, including his fiery powers as well as super strength, Speed Demon is not actually all that fast despite what his name would suggest. While the character is a formidable fighter and an all-around powerful being, he falls very short in the speed department, especially compared to any other speedster out there. There have been other characters who have taken up this mantle, including both Jay Garrick and Wallace West. However, all of their abilities seem to be similar to the originals. Check out Blaze Allen for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1996's Speed Demon, number 1. Number 9. Kushala. Hailing from the main continuity Earth of 616 in the mid-1800s, Kushala was an Apache woman possessed by the spirit of vengeance known as the Demon Rider. To add a whole other layer of powers and depth to her character, she was also the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth at the time, making her ridiculously strong because not only was she capable of the demonic transformation and pyrokinesis that's normally associated with Ghost Rider, she could also fly and practice various types of magic, including Norse, Chaos, and Earth magic. Instead of the motorcycle or motorized vehicle that the modern Ghost Riders have, she possessed a phantom horse engulfed completely in fire. Before becoming the Spirit of Vengeance, her tribe was attacked by the US Army and her parents were unfortunately killed, so in an act of revenge she prayed for help, but instead of receiving any help from the creator, she was instead possessed by the Spirit of Vengeance. While searching for a cure to rid her of this demon, Kushala was recruited by Merlin himself with the promise of exercising the Spirit of Vengeance if she helped him with something, which led to her involvement in the War of the Realm. Check her out for yourself in 2016's Doctor Strange and the Sorcerer Supreme. Number 8. Nema. This iteration of Ghost Rider, also known as the Wrath of Heavens, the Blood Drinker, or He Who Seeks Vengeance in Our Name, isn't modeled after the normal Spirit of Vengeance that we're used to. It's modeled after a wrathful deity of the Tibetan Buddhism, and its design and methods very much reflect that. The full abilities of Nema haven't really been revealed, but it can be assumed that he possesses all the powers given to every Spirit of Vengeance. However, he possesses a penance ability fashioned by his beliefs. Known as the Stare of 1,000 Buddhas, this specific penance stare is highly potent and enables him to punish those who have wronged the innocent by forcing them to feel the pain of their victims. Nema was able to attack and destroy 2 Chinese military posts, but before actually attacking them, he offered them the chance to escape before they would face his wrath. Unfortunately for Nema though, he was found by Daniel Ketch, a former Spirit of Vengeance, and his powers were absorbed by Zadkiel before Johnny Blaze was able to find and protect him. Check out Nema in 2008's Ghost Rider Volume 6, number 28. Number 7. Shobha Mirza. Needing the power of the Spirit of Vengeance more than anything, she sought out Danny Ketch because she heard that he was the greatest of all time, which was a little bit hard for her to believe at first because of his very drunken state. Little did she know that Daniel had the Ghost Rider entity exorcised from his body completely by his friend Mary LeBau, so he wasn't really going to be any help to her. Not long after Daniel witnessed Shobha's transformation into Ghost Rider with a bit of a fun twist on it, as she rode what looks to be like a fiery elephant instead of a motorcycle, and she had 4 arms which allowed her to wield a spear, a bow, and a sword all at the same time. Shobha was eventually taken prisoner by Verminous Rex and Zadkiel, and although Daniel searched for her night after night, he couldn't find her. Somehow, she's actually the one who found him. Wounded beyond repair, the entity inside her threatened to take control, and Shobha begged Daniel to rescue her. He wasn't sure what to do, but like a parasite, Ketch just leached her powers into himself. Shobha's human half had been saved, and she thanked Daniel even as she passed away in his arms. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 2008's Ghost Rider Danny Ketch, number 1 all the way to number 4. Number 6. Ghost Rider 1 million BC. You could probably guess it from the name, but this iteration of Ghost Rider was around way before Johnny Blaze or any of the other hosts that we all know very well because they were active during 1 million BC. Very early on, he realized he was much smarter than the rest of his caveman pack, a fact that he ended up keeping to himself because he didn't want them to know that. One day, a Wendigo in disguise took over his tribe and eventually ate everyone except for the boy. Instead, Wendigo gave him the name Ghost and gave him the task of finding him again one day. Ghost set out on his quest but quickly realized he might be a little bit in over his head as the harsh environments were taking a toll on him. However, he was then approached by a snake who tempted him into saying his real name to achieve his goal, and from that point on he was bonded with a spirit of vengeance and rode a mammoth imbued with hellfire. 5 years later, Ghost finally tracked down the Wendigo to exact his revenge and engaged him in an intense fight that ended with the Wendigo pushing Ghost's mammoth off a cliff with him, though the Wendigo claimed that he would survive the fall. The rider was then approached by Odin and Lady Phoenix, who asked him to join the prehistoric Avengers, and together they defeated the Fallen and sealed it in an underground chamber in what would become the modern day country of South Africa. Check out Ghost for yourself, starting with 2017's Marvel Legacy, number 1. Number 5. Noble Kale. The first official Ghost Rider, Noble Kale was alive in the 18th century and grew up with an abusive pastor father that was eventually revealed to be a minion of the Dark Lord Mephisto. After secretly marrying and having a kid with a woman by the name of Magdalena, Pastor Kale's secret was found out by her and he accused her of witchcraft and had her burned at the stake. Just before she died though, she used a curse to summon demons called Furies with the sole purpose of avenging wronged women, and they started killing the townspeople. Fearing for his life, Pastor Kale struck a deal with Mephisto. He would be kept safe and Mephisto got Noble's soul. Mephisto realized that Noble was attached to a piece of the Medallion of Power, and he activated that piece to transform Noble into the original Spirit of Vengeance, and with that power he was able to take down the Furies. Pastor Kale for some reason then made an offering to the Ghost Rider in the form of Noble's son. However, Noble as Ghost Rider didn't want to accept that at all and killed himself instead. Mephisto later appeared to claim Noble's soul, and then his brother Archangel Uriel appeared and said that Noble's soul should be spared. Now, like most sibling arguments, an agreement was impossible, so they compromised and decided that his soul would remain in the void until it was rebonded with certain members of his family. Check the story out for yourself, starting with his first appearance all the way back in 1990's Ghost Rider Volume 3, number 1. Number 4. Barbara Ketch. Finally, a Ghost Rider on our list today not from Earth 616. Hailing from Earth 11,993, Barbara Ketch was the sister of Daniel Ketch, who became the Ghost Rider of their world after her brother was killed. Now, it's not really stated, but it's assumed that she shares the same powers that her brother's 616 counterpart had, but for some reason never used her penance stare because she straight up just preferred killing. Surprisingly, she was able to suppress the Spirit of Vengeance's influence through sheer willpower alone, but she still went on a killing spree anyways, taking out her brother's killer and any other villains that she came across. It took the combined power of Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, and Johnny Blaze to stop her reign of terror, and they did so by separating her body from the demon. As soon as she was back to her normal self, she regretted her actions so much. However, she didn't get the chance to make up for her sins because she died shortly after. Check out her one-off appearance for yourself in 1993's What If Volume 2, number 45. Number 3. Ghost Rider 2099. Kenshiro Zero Cochran, hailing from Earth 928, is the next on our list today, and for good reason. Zero in the 2099 Marvel timeline is a cybernetic take on the Spirit of Vengeance as opposed to the supernatural being we might be used to. Originally, he was a hacker for the street gang known as Hotwire Martyrs, and one day they were attacked by the rival gang, the Artificial Kids, with a Z, and most of the martyrs were taken out. In a last-ditch effort to escape them, Zero did his best to screw them over by transferring the encrypted file to his girlfriend and then jacking directly into cyberspace in an attempt to burn out his headwear implants. He woke up in a very surreal cyberspace inhabited by incredible machinery known as the Ghostworks, and they enlisted Zero as an agent of change. Before hitting the streets, Zero used the robot's holographic capabilities to wreath his skull-like head in an artificial flame as an homage to his fallen comrades. That also served to make him look very similar to Ghost Riders of the previous century. Since he's not an actual Spirit of Vengeance, he doesn't have the powers you would normally associate with Ghost Riders. However, that doesn't mean he's not a formidable foe. While still driving the classic motorcycle, Zero used holographic camouflage, nanite regenerative abilities, eye-mounted lasers, and more to take down his enemies and get revenge for his fallen comrades. Check out this story for yourself, starting with 1994's Ghost Rider 2099, number 1. Number 2. Caleb. Okay, back to Earth 616 for now, folks. 2 years after the Civil War was over, a former captive named Caleb stumbled upon and took in a wounded soldier named Travis Parham and nursed him back to health. One day, Parham discovered a cave that held a collection of glowing skulls. Upon touching the skulls, Parham saw a vision of a hellish nether realm populated by a creature with a burning skull for a head. Caleb told Parham that the creature he saw came from his ancestors' country and could be called upon when something needed to be made right, an instrument of vengeance, if you will. After Parham left, Caleb and his family were sadly killed by George Reagan, and Parham swore to return years later to get revenge. What he didn't know was someone was already beating him to it. This Ghost Rider killed each of Reagan's men, and finally, Reagan himself, and the killers returned after having made a deal with a demon. In a final showdown between Reagan's band and the Ghost Rider, Parham discovered that the rider was actually his former friend Caleb, powered by the Spirit of Vengeance that Travis had envisioned years ago. This Ghost Rider has all the powers you would normally associate with Ghost Rider, as well as 2 other powers. Possession, which allows him to possess and control corpses, and dimensional travel, which allows him to, travel to other dimensions at ease. Check him out for yourself in 2007's Ghost Rider Trail of Tears, number 1. And number 1, Ghost Panther. This Ghost Rider variant comes to us from the Warp World, and if you don't know what this is, let me give you a little taste. Put most simply, it is a pocket dimension of Earth 616 where history was rewritten and adapted around fused heroes such as Iron Man and Thor as Iron Hammer, Captain America and Doctor Strange as Soldier Supreme, and of course, Ghost Rider and Black Panther as Ghost Panther. The principal concept T'Challa was an arrogant boy who, because of his conflict with his father, was exiled from his home country. He traveled to America where you found Jericho Simpson, a fusion of Brother Voodoo and Crash Simpson, who ended up becoming his new father figure and even gave T'Challa a new name, Johnny Blaze, and he ended up becoming a pretty successful stunt performer. Fast forward 5 years, and during a stunt, he sensed his father T'Chaka dying and got very distracted, which resulted in his own death. He was then revived by Zarathos, half-sister of Bast, and offered him powers in exchange for eating the souls of sinners. At first he was reluctant, but when battling his father's killers, he accepted the offer and became Ghost Panther and battled Eric Killraven, a fusion of Eric Killmonger and Killraven, while riding a burning panther. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 2018's Infinity Wars number 3. Number 10, Wolverine Earth X. No, not necessarily a dark Wolverine when it comes to tone. This Wolverine is dark because he's just kinda sad. Hailing from Earth 9997, this iteration of Logan has a pretty much identical backstory to that of his 616 counterpart, with the only difference being that Logan's ancestors were a group of pre-humans known as the Moon Clan. This means that instead of being a mutant, he is considered a pure breed human, and all of his powers are a part of his natural biology and not because of any mutations. Fast forward a couple of centuries and we see Logan get adopted by the Howlett family after their child dies, and they just kind of stumble upon him in the wild. The rest of his history seems to be the same though. Wondering why I'm saying this is a bit of a sadder Wolverine? Well, it's because he gets pretty lazy later on in his life after he finally marries Jean Grey and has kids. He lets himself go a little bit and grows a pretty impressive beer gut, and he and Jean turn into the cliche bickering married couple. Later in the story, when the Skrull attacks New York, Wolverine refuses to aid Captain America and the other heroes in fighting, and Jean is so upset with the decision and the man that he's become that she leaves Logan and never really looks back. Check out this storyline for yourself, starting with 1999's Earth X number 0. Number 9, Dark Claw. One of the coolest looking hero mashups to come out of the Amalgam universe, in my opinion, is the hero known as Dark Claw, the combination of Batman and Wolverine named Logan Wayne. With a similar backstory to Batman, Wayne witnessed his parents' murder at a young age and was then sent off to live with his uncle in Alberta. However, that didn't last very long either because his uncle was murdered as well, and Wayne was sent to live in a home run by nuns. When he was finally old enough, he left them and enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force alongside a man named Creed H. Quinn, and the two of them were submitted to the Weapon X program, aka the Canadian Super Soldier program. It was there that the Wolverine half of this hero came to be, as it was here he had learned of his metamutant powers and had his bones fused with adamantium. Quinn, however, was not so lucky because through the course of the experiments he grew more and more insane and would eventually become the Hyena, a combination of Sabretooth and the Joker and Darkclaw's greatest enemy. Equipped with all the powers of Wolverine and the vast knowledge of Batman, Darkclaw is truly an awesome character, so check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1996's Marvel vs. DC. Number 3. Number 8, Wolverine The End. While this is a Old Man Logan, we're not talking about the Old Man Logan just yet. Logan of Earth 4011 again shared the same life as the 616 counterpart with a few differences here and there. One of the most prominent being that his brother John Howlett Jr. didn't actually die, and was instead taken by the first Weapon X program because John also seemed to possess a healing factor and bone claws. However, he did eventually escape. Logan, however, was not so lucky and he was captured by the new Weapon X program a few years later and had his skeleton fused with adamantium. And from there, the rest of his history is pretty much similar to his mainstream counterpart. You know, joins the X-Men, has a bunch of kids, you know, the whole deal. Fast forward to the end of the 21st century and we get a glimpse of what it would be like if Logan didn't really have to fight anymore, and just had the opportunity to grow old and sell animal pelts in Canada. Even though he aged really slowly, you can really see that time is catching up with him. He's not as fast as he used to be, one of his claws is broken, he's developed arthritis, he's just overall doubting his abilities and knows that even though he has a healing factor, he's gonna die pretty soon. Fast forward past Victor Creed's funeral and we see Logan travel to Japan and discover that the White Ghost is none other than his brother John, and the two battle it out with John dying in Logan's arms. Give this story a read for yourself, starting with Wolverine The End, number 1. Number 7, Jim Logan. Just like how there's a Spider-Man noir out there in the multiverse, there's also a Wolverine noir as well. From Earth 90,214, Jim Logan is an interesting case because unlike the other heroes in the Marvel noir universe, he seems to have two different personas. The first is a heavily scarred bootlegger known as Captain Jim, a serious drunk who was previously entangled with the con artist known as Jean Grey. He uses a rad looking set of portable claws which he wields with some deadly force. And then in his other incarnation within the noir reality, Logan is a private detective who's tasked with a mysterious and and dangerous case that opens up the floodgates to his own dark past, who also seems to wield a set of claws for self-defense, although it's never really confirmed or denied if these two characters are in fact the same, or just two completely different people. Taking place in the Bowery of New York, Wolverine Noir takes Jim Logan on a dark, twisted adventure where he confronts demons of various kinds. There's also an air of mystery to Wolverine Noir, so we don't know who's who, but actions soon make facts very clear, especially when characters like Rose O'Hara and Victor Creed enter the fold. These merciless individuals take Jim Logan on a roller coaster ride that concludes with several of his friends' deaths, and Logan having to deal with their losses. Check out Jim for yourself, starting with 2009's Wolverine Noir #1. Number 6. Daken. The son that Wolverine never knew he had, Akihiro, better known as Daken, had a pretty dark life right from the get-go. His mother, Itsu, was gunned down by the Winter Soldier in an attempt to draw out her husband, Wolverine, which is a pretty terrible thing on its own, but to make matters worse, she was pregnant with Daken at the time as well. Wolverine didn't know this at all, but thankfully the baby inherited his healing factors and a lot of his other powers, which kept it alive long enough for it to be extracted from the mother's womb. Raised with a hatred of his own father from then on, who he believed was responsible for his mother's death, Daken set out to get his vengeance. Cocky and reckless, Daken has powers pretty much identical to that of his father, the only real differences being the orientation of his claws, since one comes out of his wrist, and that he also has the ability to manipulate people to do his bidding via pheromones. Daken's quest for revenge has seen him adopt the alias of Dark Wolverine as part of Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers and even in the Dark X-Men. All in all, Wolverine has fathered many bastards over the years, but the only one that could really give him a run for his money is Daken himself. There's a whole lot to this character's story, so check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2006's Wolverine Origins, #5. Number 5. Phoenix Force Wolverine. Man, if there is one thing that Marvel enjoys more than making Wolverine old, it is granting someone the power of the Phoenix Force. Now with that in mind, it was only a matter of time before we'd run into an old, Phoenix Force wielding Logan at the heart of the universe. Logan of Earth 14,412 mirrors his mainstream counterpart's history up to the point where King Loki completely wiped out humankind to make his brother Thor suffer. Logan ended up dying, but was chosen as the new host of the Phoenix Force, and he began traveling the universe, wiping out celestial bodies to aid the universe as it met its slow death due to entropy. After encountering a future Loki, Logan was convinced to go back in time to prevent Loki from ever gathering the Infinity Stones, which he gladly did because it gave Logan the opportunity to see his long dead friends just one last time. After Wolverine returns to the future, he comes in contact with an old friend, Thor, and much to Thor's surprise, Logan attacks him pretty much right on sight. The two battle it out before eventually putting aside their differences to team up and take down a much bigger threat: Doom. Old Man Phoenix and Thor then faced off against Doom, who reduced Logan to a nothing but a skeleton with the Spirit of Vengeance's Hellfire. But Logan resurrected and sacrificed himself to transfer the Phoenix Force into Mjolnir, which helped Thor defeat Doom once and for all. Give this Logan story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2017's Marvel Legacy, #1. Number 4. Zombie Wolverine. Do you see the smile? You know I'm smiling, right? It's because I get to talk about the Zombieverse again, my big favorite. With a history identical to his 616 counterpart before the spread of the zombie virus, Wolverine ends up getting infected by the zombie virus when both Captain America and Hawkeye bite him. Now, one would probably expect Wolverine's healing factor to prevent the virus from affecting him, but it actually shorts out due to the virus overwhelming his system and he turns into a zombie. Now, one thing I love about this universe is that the zombie virus is depicted just a little bit differently than normal. It doesn't destroy its victims' mental faculties, all it really does is make them have this insatiable need for human flesh. So as a result, Wolverine is just as witty as he was when he was still living. In a battle with the Silver Surfer, the zombie Wolverine succeeds in defeating Galactus' Herald, and he and the other zombies devour the Surfer. This grants Wolverine the power Cosmic, which he utilizes later to devour Galactus himself. The power Cosmic doesn't last very long though, as he eventually loses it and reverts back to a normal zombie. Now, given the zombie Wolverine's body count, it is fair to say that he's the best at what he does as well. Y'all know I love this storyline, so if you haven't taken my word for it and checked it out already, please do so, starting with 2007's Marvel Zombies, Dead Days, #1. Number 3. Helverine. This unnamed demon began his journey for revenge on Wolverine by partnering with Roger, aka the husband, who he convinced to join the Red Right Hand. Roger and the members of the Red Right Hand sacrificed a man and a woman in order to invoke the demon once again. However, the demon appeared in a form of a snake and killed the two human sacrifices, stating that in order to get his revenge, it would cost them just a little bit more than that. Eventually, Logan was lured into a van by Mystique, where the leader of the Red Right Hand used another human sacrifice to have Helverine take over Wolverine's body, trapping actual Wolverine's soul in hell in the process. Helverine then went on a bit of a killing spree, torturing and killing some of Wolverine's closest friends and family. On top of that, he also attempted to manipulate many people, including X-23, into joining his armies. However, he didn't seem to succeed, as they were all way too smart to believe that he was actually Logan. It took a ton of force and a lot of the X-Men to take him down, but eventually Helverine was cast back to hell after a projection of Nightcrawler and what appeared to be a vivid memory of Jean Grey as the White Phoenix burned the demon from his mind. Making his first appearance in 2010's Wolverine Volume 4 number 1, why not check out this story for yourself? Number 2. Weapon X. In the Age of Apocalypse universe, the X-Men were formed under slightly different circumstances than we're used to, with one of the biggest differences being how Wolverine, aka Weapon X, joined the X-Men. Instead of being slowly integrated into the team by Professor X, Magneto instead recruited Wolverine onto his team and he tasked Jean Grey with stabilizing Wolverine's rage, which led to a bit of a romance forming between the two as they worked together on the X-Men. Another pretty big difference in this universe was how Wolverine fought with Cyclops. Now their initial confrontation wasn't actually over Jean Grey like you might expect, it's actually because Cyclops was working for Apocalypse. When they encountered each other in Apocalypse Citadel, they battled it out and Wolverine lost a hand while Cyclops lost an eye. He then capped that stump with a metal plate, which he later revealed to house his retractable claws. Fast forward a little bit and we see Weapon X turn from a noble warrior into a ruthless Weapon Omega after he learned that he had been betrayed and that his love Jean Grey had not perished, but had instead been abducted by Sinister. Not able to cope with this information, Logan allowed himself to be manipulated in order to save the planet, and the result of these manipulations was Weapon Omega. With this newfound power to rival that of Apocalypse, the strain proves too much for Wolverine and his mind completely broke, turning him into the heir of the monster he had once fought to slay. Check out 2006's Wolverine Origins number 5 onwards if you want to know more. And number 1, Old Man Logan. So come on, how could we not put Old Man Logan at the top of this list? I mean, come on, he is one of the best iterations of the character out there, and he has had to deal with some pretty dark things in his many years of life. So 50 years ago, supervillains from around the globe banded together and executed a devastating coordinated attack, taking the Earth's heroes by surprise, resulting in not only the end of the Age of Heroes, but also the United States is revealed to now be carved into territories ruled with an iron fist by various supervillains. We discover that the hero once known as Wolverine is one of the few to survive, and that he is now taking up a life as a simple farmer with his wife and 2 children, vowing to never resort to violence again. However, finances start to become a bit of an issue for Logan, and eventually he decides to accompany a blind Hawkeye across the country to deliver the last of the super soldier serum, all for the promise of a large payday. When they arrive at their destination, Hawkeye and Logan learn it's an ambush set up by the Red Skull. He attempts to take the serum from Logan, but despite his age, he manages to kill Red Skull using Cap's old shield. Logan then returns home shortly after, only to find that his family was slaughtered by the Hulk gang, and in a massive rage, he murders the entire Hulk gang, leaving only Bruce Banner Jr. alive. Now I love this whole limited series, so why not check it out for yourself, starting with 2015's Old Man Logan, number 1.
Number 10. The Perfect World. The Perfect World, also known as Alternate Earth 11638, is home to the Amazing Spider-Man. In this reality, Peter Parker never lost his Uncle Ben, which you would think would make him a better guy. Peter in this reality is rich and popular, having lost no one, and basically lives a happier and less tragic life. However, without this loss, in reality, this version of Peter Parker is basically a huge jerk. The Amazing Spider-Man ends up motivated by his Uncle Ben to use an invention created by Parker's own corporation, which opens portals into alternate worlds, to steal the life energy of other Spider folks and use it to bolster his own powers. Rude. Number 9. Worst X-Man ever. In the alternate reality that Bailey Hoskins belongs to, the world has basically become an apocalyptic one for those who oppose the great mutant ruler King Riches. Riches managed to overthrow both Charles Xavier and Magneto and decided which mutants basically get to live. Hint, it's all the people that surrender and submit to him and his influence. Not a fan of this tyrannical future, Bailey Hoskins, known as the worst X-Man ever, in the end fixes this reality by killing Riches with his mutant power, which allows him to basically self-destruct, but only once as he can't regenerate at all. It is then implied that our reality comes into existence due to Hoskins fixing this previous and terrible one, making him actually perhaps the best mutant ever? Number 8. Battle Realm / Battle World. Battle Realm is the alternate Earth of 15513, which houses God Emperor Doom's Battle World. Before Battle World was constructed, many heroes had perished during the collisions of alternate realities known as the Incursion. Dr. Doom acquired power that allowed him to reconstruct a new world patched together with alternate realities known as Battle World, where he was the one ruler, taking the title God Emperor. Doom demanded loyalty of his subjects and was worshipped as a deity, believed to be the one true creator of all things, with many who lived on Battle World believing there was not even anything beyond their own reality, and in some cases their own realm. Eventually a rebellion rose and Mr. Fantastic vs. 616 and his 1610 counterpart, the Maker, ended up exposing God Emperor Doom's true source of power, which was Molecule Man, who in turn gave Reed Richards his power so he could build a new and better world, thereby causing Battleworld to collapse in on itself. Number 7. Deadpool kills the Marvelverse. The Deadpool of Earth 12101 doesn't even just settle for killing the Marvelverse. This twisted alternate Deadpool ends up going in the same reality to take out acclaimed literary characters and even multiversal alternates of himself as well, becoming the leader of the evil Deadpool Corps. Due to Deadpool being so annoying, the other heroes lock him up in an effort to have him treated for his mental illness. Little do they know, the man treating him is actually Psycho Man, a villain who attempts to manipulate his patients, brainwashing them so he can use them for his own machinations. When he attempts to do this to Deadpool, however, because his mind is already so warped, something goes wrong. He cures Deadpool of the voices inside his mind, but instead, Deadpool gets a new voice in their stead, one that convinces him to kill the Marvelverse heroes and villains of his Earth. This series is not just dark for the concept, but can also be considered dark for how violent it is. Number 6. Deadpool kills the Marvelverse again. Speaking of Deadpool killing the Marvelverse, he does it again! Although this time around, it's a new alternate reality with a new alternate version of Deadpool. At least, that's what we're led to believe. Although for both series we do have the same creative team with both Cullen Bunn and Dalibor Talaic working on both Deadpool Kills the Marvelverse and Deadpool Kills the Marvelverse Again. Cullen Bunn has actually been the mastermind behind both Killustrated and Deadpool Kills Deadpool as well. In Deadpool Kills the Marvelverse Again, this alternate version of Deadpool has an even darker story, being brainwashed by villains into becoming their hitman, taking out heroes while having fantasies of going on fun adventures with them. It's pretty messed up. In the end, Deadpool realizes what has really been going on, but only after he has killed the heroes. He then decides to take revenge on the villains, killing them thereafter. Number 5. Punisher kills the Marvelverse. If you thought Punisher's life wasn't tragic enough, the alternate Punisher of Earth 95126 ends up planning to take out the entire Marvel Universe after his family is killed once more due to being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This time they are civilian casualties in a superhero battle between the Avengers, Skrulls, and X-Men. Blaming the heroic and villainous communities alike, Punisher plots to take out basically all of the main characters of Marvel, be they good or evil, directly involved in his family's death or not. Realizing that he himself had become a vigilante in his own way, he finishes the story by taking his own life. Number 4. Earth 51412. We only know one main character from this timeline, and he dies shortly after us meeting him, but his story is still one of my favorite scary Spider-Man alternate stories. Earth 51412 is the home of Patton Parnell, one of the spider totems. Like Peter Parker, Patton is bitten by a radioactive spider, which turns him into a horrific version of Spider-Man, one that craves the flesh of other beings. Patton's story, you see, is not as heroic as his 616 counterpart. Instead, Patton, who is mistreated by his Uncle Ted and is teased by other kids at school, but pines for his own version of MJ, the girl next door, ends up turning those that teased him into victims as he literally becomes a Spider-Man. That is to say, a man spider. He also lays eggs inside his Uncle Ted, which is really something else. This Spider-Verse story is giving the Zombieverse a run for their money with this entire horror show. Number 3. Kobik's Timeline. In Kobik's timeline, Captain America became a Hydra agent after becoming captured and brainwashed by Hydra when he was just a child. As a young man and Hydra agent, he was then planted in the States, acting as a longtime sleeper agent, working to infiltrate the United States of America. He became Captain America just like in the Earth 616 continuity, but instead was now a double agent, working for the Axis forces. Eventually, he revealed his true nature and overthrew the United States government, becoming Hydra Supreme. Fortunately, when the real Captain America, whose true self had been stored in the Cosmic Cube, re-emerged, he was able to defeat this evil version of himself and save the world from existing permanently in this timeline. Whew. Number 2. Last Gun on Earth. The reality of Earth 11080 has a bit of a Marvel Zombieverse feel, but this time around we have at least one person who is immune to the virus that is spreading and infecting the entire world, including our hero population. Oh no. Punisher is the only one immune, and in the end it's up to him to save those still uninfected and fight off all the infected heroes and villains. This alternate Earth also gives us the stories of Marvel Universe versus Wolverine, where Wolverine is actually forced to take out his own infected X-Men teammates, and Marvel Universe versus the Avengers, where the Avengers are forced to team up with Doctor Doom, who then betrays them, which is kind of expected, really. Leaving Punisher as the last gun to defend the last of Earth's survivors in Marvel Universe vs. Punisher, which was actually the first series to come out sequentially, inspiring the others to be written as prequels. Number 1. Ruins. In my part 1 we talked a bit about the Zombieverse. Like the Zombieverse, Ruins is an interesting alternate reality for me. It's squeegee. I both admire how crazy and dark it is and also dislike it somewhat, because it just makes me uncomfortable. But also that's kind of the point of Ruins. In this reality, basically every superpower is kind of a curse. It examines superpowers and their side effects as though they were real, and follows a reporter who travels the states documenting the horrific cases of heroes. Not all heroes are actually superpowered in this reality either. Dr. Donald Blake is a cult leader who believed he is Thor after suffering from an addiction to hallucinogens. Emma Frost runs the Church of the Next Generation, where she encourages her followers to allow her to adopt their children, giving them non-essential surgeries in an attempt to help them tap into their psychic potential. Yikes.
Number 10. Venom 2018. Okay, now before there's a lot of angry comments, just let me explain. In this version of Venom, the symbiote still comes from outer space, but the difference with this version is that, it was not brought by Spider-Man after the events of Secret Wars. The symbiote doesn't even bond with Spider-Man first, it just goes directly with Eddie, because of the Life Foundation. Now, I know a lot of people are mixed on this movie. I'm one of them. The movie itself had a lot of problems, but the one thing that the majority of people agreed on was how cool Venom looked in this movie. Finally, he was brought to screen and he looked comic accurate after, because a lot of the complaints was Spider-Man 3. Now, the movie itself could have been better, but, baby steps. Maybe Venom, Let There Be Carnage will be better, and finally we'll actually get to see Venom and Carnage on the big screen at the same time, which is cool. Just hopefully the movie holds up. Number 9. Ultimate Venom. So in the Ultimate Universe, Richard Parker, aka Peter's dad, and Edward Brock, aka Eddie Brock's dad, were the ones to develop the symbiote. But Peter and Eddie are the ones who continue to work on this project once their fathers are no longer around. At one point, Peter gets a drop of the symbiote on himself and dons the black suit Spider-Man. It enhanced his powers, but as Peter found out one time, it was... how do you put this? Just really hard to control, and it made him a bit strange, as he almost killed a robber. Peter doesn't want to continue, but of course, Eddie does. Eddie is upset and decides to continue this work and merges himself with the symbiote, thus creating Ultimate Venom. I think the first time I really got into the Ultimate series was after I played Ultimate Spider-Man the game, which to this day is, it's either that or Spider-Man 2 the game or the new Spider-Man PS4 as the best Spider-Man game ever. Those three are just so good. But I remember just playing so much Ultimate Spider-Man as a kid. I replayed that game multiple times. Number 8, Deadpool Venom. This is something that is actually really funny. So in Deadpool Secret Wars, Deadpool wears the symbiote. Very briefly though, but he does merge with it, apparently being one of the first people to do so. We all know how crazy and insane Deadpool is, so it should come as no surprise that when the symbiote is part of him, that makes the symbiote want to go, well, a little mad and crazy as well. Even for the brief time it was merged with Deadpool, he made that big of an impact on it. This isn't even the last time Deadpool merged with the symbiote. He also did in Back in Black. After the symbiote left Peter, it merged with Wade Wilson, enhancing his abilities, and even gave him a cool new suit. And we all know Deadpool already has a cool suit, so it's pretty cool. Number 7, Agent Venom. So Agent Venom becomes possible because basically the US government have got their hands on the symbiote, and of course, they want to transform it for themselves to use it as a weapon, which, is always the case. Now, Flash Thompson was in the military, and during a time when he was serving, he lost both of his legs. The military decides to use Flash to become Agent Venom. He bonds with the symbiote and regenerates his legs. So, since the government controls Agent Venom, they want to keep it all, low-key, hush-hush, and they have him acting in the shadows for them. This led to a pretty bad Venom outfit, and a lot of people really want to see Agent Venom be adapted on the screen one day, and think it'd be a nice change of pace since Eddie Brock has been the main point in the movie so far. Have Flash Thompson do it. Hey, come on, he's established, we could make it happen. Number 6, T-Rex Venom. So yes, there has even been a T-Rex Venom. That just blows my mind. This was all in the comic series Old Man Logan, which, the movie Logan was based off of, slightly. So although we didn't see this in the actual film, the Old Man Logan comic series, which, as I just mentioned, it is adapted from, had dinosaurs that appeared from the Savage Land. I mean, that's pretty nuts. And to make things even crazier, a T-Rex has the symbiote and is after Logan. I don't know about you guys, but I'd definitely love to see T-Rex Venom on the big screen. Imagine him fighting Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. God, that would have been amazing. But probably impossible now. But I mean, a fan can dream, right? Number 5, She-Venom. So She-Venom was introduced in the comics when Eddie Brock married Anne. Now, Anne doesn't become She-Venom until they end the marriage. As it turns out, Anne gets shot, and when Eddie hears about this, he still wants to help her and not have her killed. So he does the only logical thing. He lets her bond with the symbiote. It bonds with Anne, but it doesn't go as expected and actually turns her quite violent to the point where she attacks the people that injured her. Eddie doesn't want Anne to turn evil and he takes the symbiote back. They even introduced her in the 2018 film with Michelle Williams taking on the role of Anne, and we actually got to see her as She-Venom, which, you know, was a pretty cool moment. But yeah, I mean, they're few and far between. Number 4, Venom Thor. Thor has had a variety of different versions of himself throughout the years, but there has even been a version of Venom Thor. So in the comic series What If, they play a scenario up of the symbiote being able to take over any superhero and even successfully taking over Spider-Man. It even took over the body of Hulk in that series. Hulk ends up fighting Thor, and well, the symbiote transfers over to Thor. He is able to defeat it and detach it from his body, but it was cool to see them, you know, merge together, even if it was for a short time. I mean, seeing Venom look like kind of like Thor was interesting, but you know, it was pretty cool. Number 3, Punisher Venom. This is another iteration from the comic series What If, and in this version of Venom, we saw the dark combination of the symbiote merging with Frank Castle. Yes, if you ever thought about the symbiote merging with the Punisher, you got a glimpse of that in this series with the creation of Punisher Venom. This duo became very dangerous, with the symbiote even being able to create a gun without running out of bullets. Number 2, Hulk Venom. So in the comic series What If, the symbiote attaches to a new host, the Hulk. It's able to take over the Hulk and even make him more powerful than ever before. Being as unpredictable as Hulk can be in general, having the Hulk merged with the symbiote creates a deadly combination. Now, in the series, it wasn't on Hulk for a long duration, but still the fact that we got to witness the two of them bond together was really cool, and also very, very scary. Number 1, Red Hulk Ghost Rider Venom. So this is quite the different version of Venom that we have, you know, ever seen, quite frankly. In this version, we get a combination of Red Hulk, Ghost Rider, and of course, Venom, aka Agent Venom at this point. Now, X-23 is in this storyline as well, but isn't part of the merge. Now, you might ask yourself, how did this even happen? Well, it turns out Blackheart, aka Mephisto's son, is trying to merge Hell with Earth. So, in the battle, the only way that they can try and match Blackheart's power is to merge together. So Red Hulk and Ghost Rider merge with the symbiote, creating this ultimate force that is able to become strong enough to defeat Blackheart and his evil plans. I mean, that would be something to see on the big screen, if they, especially in the MCU, if they get Red Hulk and Venom and, oh god, Ghost Rider, that'd be insane.
Number 10, Sandman. Sandman has always had a kind of tragic story. He was a criminal who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and due to radioactive exposure was granted his sand shape-shifting abilities. He hasn't always been a villain, and sometimes strives to become a sort of hero, though he usually ends up becoming a criminal once more in the end, tragically. He even has been known to be a sometimes friend of the Fantastic Four's Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, and Spider-Man. One dark story involving Sandman took place during one of the many times he fought Spider-Man. Spider-Man usually had creative and sometimes twisted methods when it came to how he chose to defeat Sandman. He vacuumed Sandman up at one point, tossed him into a wind turbine, and he's even set him on fire. But Spider-Man also at one point exposed Sandman to an experimental chemical substance, which caused Sandman to become insane and also caused him to become severely dirty, as dust and garbage and debris became attracted to him and entangled within him. The worst part of this was when Sandman pleaded with Spider-Man to fix him as his mental state continued to worsen and deteriorate. And initially, Spider-Man was actually a jerk and refused to help. Pretty messed up. Number 9, Vermin. Vermin was a Spider-Man villain who really only became such because of previously being abused by others throughout his life. Edward Whalen, as a young boy, was severely mistreated by his father and ended up running away because of this. He then ran into Baron Zemo and Arnim Zola and became the victim of their experiments, which transformed him into a rat-like humanoid creature. They sent Vermin on a mission to eliminate their enemy, Captain America. This conflict eventually led him to be apprehended later on by both Captain America and Spider-Man, who ran into Vermin in New York City. Vermin would also become the prey of Kraven during his last hunt, and from there would end up becoming allies with Spider-Man. Spider-Man actually. Number 8. Hammerhead. Hammerhead has a pretty dark origin story in comparison to some other villains. He and his family had left the Soviet Union when he was young, and he grew up claiming to be Italian instead of Russian, even preferring to speak Italian in his family's home. However, this would anger his father and would prompt him to beat his son with a hammer, scarring up the young boy's head. That's pretty messed up. In the end, Hammerhead managed to work his way into the Italian mob and would also end up beating Spider-Man in a fight. He was given both cybernetic enhancements, including a partial adamantium skeleton, and had his strength level increased by Mr. Negative. He also has been known to work with Black Cat when she is walking on the more villainous criminal and organized crime side of things. Hammerhead would also get revenge on his father, killing him with a large hammer. His origin could have possibly served to inspire the Daredevil Netflix series Origins for Wilson Fisk, who also killed his father with the hammer. Number 7. Mindworm. Mindworm might not have been a major Spider-Man villain, but that doesn't mean that his story wasn't super dark and tragic. Mindworm was William Turner, a mutant with powerful psionic powers who was kinda like a mental energy vampire, not to be confused with Will Turner from Pirates of the Caribbean. William needed to feed on others' mental energy or he'd actually die. As a child, he accidentally killed his mother in front of his father, draining her mental energy completely. His father went into shock and died as a result of witnessing this. William would then be raised in an orphanage, studying passionately and known for his intelligence. As an adult, he fed off of his neighbor's mental energy, taking a little from each person in his area, but not enough to kill anyone. Unfortunately, Spider-Man was one of his neighbors and sensed what Mindworm was doing. Misunderstanding that William's psychic attack was for evil purposes, Spider-Man fought Mindworm and handed him over to the police. Later on, the two enemies would actually become friends. However, Mindworm would also later on once again relapse, becoming a criminal, as well as becoming severely mentally ill, in addition to being homeless. This all culminated into prompting Mindworm to give up when he was being attacked by a street gang and allow himself to be killed. So sad. Poor Mindworm. Number 6. Hobgoblin. There has been more than one Hobgoblin over the years, but many of them have proven to be quite dark villains. Roderick Kingsley as the Hobgoblin would be the one responsible for the creation or transformation of Peter Parker's friend and Betty Grant's husband, Ned Leeds, into another version of that villain. Ned Leeds was brainwashed by the Hobgoblin and convinced to commit criminal acts, even sometimes believing that he himself was actually Roderick Kingsley, the Hobgoblin, causing him to behave extremely villainously, adopting the Hobgoblin persona for himself. When Ned Leeds was murdered, it was because Kingsley had leaked the true identity of Hobgoblin as being Leeds, causing him to be targeted and killed by the Foreigner. Number 5. Morlun. Even when Morlun is not threatening the entire existence of all of the spider totems in massive stories like Spider-Verse or Spider-Geddon, he's still pretty terrifying. Despite looking like a gothic vampire wannabe, Morlun is actually one of the Inheritors, a family of energy vampires who feed off of totems throughout the multiverse. In the story The Other, he also tormented Peter mercilessly, almost killing him at one point, beating him to death, and eating one of his eyeballs. Ew. Number 4. Kingpin. Despite the fact that Kingpin isn't one of the first people you think of when you think of dark and menacing Spider-Man villains, he's been around since the early days of Spider-Man's adventures, appearing in Spider-Man comics in the 1960s alongside many of Spider-Man's other classic villains. Wilson Fisk has always been one of the darkest, most menacing villains because of the amount of power and control that he wields. In the film Into the Spider-Verse, we saw respect paid to this character in terms of how great of a Spider-Man villain he truly is when he became the big bad of the film that Miles and his team of Spider-Folks went up against. He was also the one responsible for killing the Peter Parker from Miles' own reality. And in the comics, he also almost killed Spider-Man's Aunt May after learning of Spider-Man's secret identity and choosing to target those Peter loved during the events of the Back in Black story. Number 3. Lizard. Lizard is one of the darkest villains on Spider-Man's roster because of how tragic his origins are. Kirk Connors basically is a victim in a monster horror story, a sort of werewolf-like scenario, but as a lizard instead of a wolf. Dr. Connors simply sought to explore the science behind possible limb regeneration, and it was his studies and exposure to an experimental serum that caused him to transform into the villain known as the Lizard. He is often presented as a villain who has no choice but to give in to his animal instincts, which is what makes him so villainous, while Connors himself really has no intention to harm others. The monster within him, however, the Lizard, often does. At one point, he transforms back into the villain known as the Lizard during a story called Shed and is tragically consumed by his animal instincts completely, which causes him to eat his his own son. It doesn't get much darker than that. Number 2. Scorpion. Originally, Matt Gargan was just a private investigator hired by Jameson to uncover the secret of how exactly Peter Parker was able to get the best pictures of Spider-Man. He was later coerced into participating in an experiment wherein he was combined with the traits of a scorpion. This gave Gargan superpowers but also drove him insane, transforming him into a criminal and a villain. During Dark Reign, Matt Gargan would become Norman Osborn's Spider-Man on his Dark Avengers team, bonding with the Venom symbiote, and becoming one of the most vicious iterations of Venom to date when bonded with it. In fact, anytime Scorpion and the Venom symbiote have merged in the comics, they become a deadly villain, often going on a murderous rampage, shamelessly consuming their victims, and becoming an almost uncontrollable level of deadly. If you thought Eddie Brock's Venom was scary, no. Scorpion as Venom is scary. Number 1. Jackal. Jackal, of course, is one of the darkest Spider-Man supervillains around. He was Gwen Stacy's teacher, Professor Warren, but became obsessed with Gwen and fell in love with her. When Gwen died during the battle between Green Goblin and Spider-Man, the professor blamed Spider-Man and decided he would create a clone of her and Peter Parker, after learning of Spider-Man's true identity. He was the villain behind the events of Clone Saga, creating more than one clone of Peter and of Gwen Stacy. And if you thought the Scorpion was scary, Jackal was also a villain who teamed up with Scorpion and even sent him to kill Spider-Man at one point. He also kidnapped and threatened the life of people Parker cared for, such as his good friend, Ned Leeds.